For 6 long years, they accused me of killing my unfaithful bride. Her parents cursed my name, called me a heartless monster. They never knew about the nights she whispered someone else's name, nor the secret note hidden deep inside that dusty piano, the truth that shattered their lies and set fire to my revenge. It started on a Tuesday. Not the kind of Tuesday where something feels off or cursed, no. It was disgustingly ordinary. She made pancakes that morning. Blueberry, my favorite. She never made pancakes, not since the first year of our marriage, and I remember asking why the sudden change. She shrugged and said, just felt like it. I chewed those pancakes with suspicion, not knowing I was swallowing the first bite of a slow, brutal poisoning. Not literal poison, of course. Something far worse. Psychological. Emotional. The kind that leaves you smiling with syrup on your chin while your reality splits underneath you. There had been cracks. Sure, I'll give her that. But they were the kind you chalk up to routine. Distance. The kind you fix with a vacation or a little spontaneity. I booked us a weekend trip to New Orleans. She canceled last minute. Her boss needed her on a Sunday, some urgent event planning crisis. She even sent me a blurry photo of the venue with her thumb covering half the frame, and I believed it. Like an idiot, I believed it. Until that night. That night I took out the trash. I stood by the curb, tying the last bag, and across the street, I saw a car. Parked. Lights off. A man in the driver's seat, tapping his steering wheel like he was waiting for a signal. I stared longer than I should have. The man noticed. He drove off. That same car was parked there again 2 nights later. Then it was never there again. What replaced it was worse. I started noticing details. Her hair was always perfect now, even at 10 p.m. when she was just stepping out to grab tampons. She started keeping her car keys in her purse. Not on the hook by the door like before. She turned off her notifications. Her passwords changed. She never touched me anymore. But she started painting her nails again. And then came the envelope. No return address. No handwriting. Just my name. Inside, a photo. Grainy, black and white, printed from a cheap home printer. It showed her outside a restaurant, her face tilted toward another man's. Not kissing, not touching, but unmistakably too close. His hand rested lightly on the small of her back. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. No note, no explanation. I didn't confront her. Not right away. I watched. I waited. 3 days later, she said she was meeting her friend Lauren for drinks. I followed her. Drove 10 car lengths behind her like I'd watched in movies. I felt pathetic. Like some low-budget detective in a failed marriage thriller. She didn't go to any bar. She didn't go to Lauren's. She pulled into a small hotel off the freeway. I parked across the street. Watched as she met him in the lobby. The same man. Tall, pale, ridiculous shoes. They laughed. She touched his arm. He leaned in and whispered something, and she tilted her head back and laughed like she hadn't laughed with me in years. I waited 3 hours. Long after they went upstairs. When she returned home at 1:12 a.m., I was sitting in the dark living room, lights off, hands on my lap, phone on the table in front of me with the photo displayed. She walked in like nothing happened, humming. Her heels clicked once, then stopped. I didn't look up. I just said, "How's Lauren?" Silence. Then the first crack. "What?" I said, "How's Lauren?" My voice didn't even shake. It scared me how calm I was. "She's fine. Why are you sitting in the dark like a weirdo?" I turned the phone toward her. "Then who's this?" The color drained from her face so fast it was like watching paint peel off wetwood. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even deny it. She laughed. Not loud. Not mocking. Just a soft, amused chuckle like she'd heard a clever joke. And then she said it. "You finally grew a spine." That was the first real moment I realized I didn't know the woman I married. I didn't know the sound of her laugh. I didn't know the way she looked when she wasn't pretending. And worst of all, I didn't know the man she turned into when she took off the mask. And I had no idea just how deep the rabbit hole would go. She didn't flinch when I stood up. She didn't even bother pretending to explain the hotel or the man or the hours she spent missing from our shared life. She just crossed her arms and leaned against the doorway like she was watching a play. A play she'd seen too many times to care about the ending. I took a step forward. Not aggressive. Just closer. I needed to see her face up close, needed to make sure I wasn't hallucinating the cruelty behind her eyes. You've been meeting him for how long? She looked past me, like the question bored her. Does it matter? It does to me. That's your problem, not mine. I blinked, stunned not by the betrayal. I'd already processed that in the parking lot, but by the casual arrogance of it, the contempt. You're not even sorry. Why should I be? You think being loyal to someone means I owe you my life? That I have to rot in this dull little house with you forever? She was pacing now, still calm. You check the same doors twice every night. You arrange your socks by color. You talk like life's a checklist. Do you even remember the last time you made me feel anything? My voice came out too soft. So your solution was to crawl into someone else's bed? Her lips curled. At least he doesn't fold his shirts like he's running a military academy. That was when I realized this wasn't guilt. This was pleasure. She wanted to see me break. She wanted to pull the knife and twist it while looking me in the eye. You think I don't know you've been watching? She added. The envelope? Please. If you wanted real dirt, you should have checked under the piano. I froze. What do you mean, under the piano? She smirked and turned away, walking toward the kitchen like she'd just finished a debate she'd won. Guess you'll have to get your hands dusty. She disappeared around the corner, and I stood there, alone again, surrounded by shadows and silence. But not for long. I walked to the piano in the den, her grandmother's antique upright, the one she never let anyone touch. She always said it was fragile, delicate, a sacred thing. I hadn't played it in years. I crouched down and ran my fingers under the baseboard behind the pedals. Nothing. Then, near the back, something crinkled. I pulled it out, a small, yellowed envelope. No markings. No date. Inside, a folded note. Written in her handwriting, unmistakably hers. I read it once. Then again. And I sat back, numb, every cell in my body screaming in disbelief. It wasn't a love letter. It was instructions. Names. Times. Amounts of money. Mentions of my full name. Bank accounts I didn't recognize. References to legal papers I hadn't signed. It was a blueprint. Not of an affair. Of a setup. She wasn't just cheating. She was orchestrating something much bigger. Something deeper. She was preparing to bury me, not just emotionally, but legally. And I was already halfway in the grave. I sat there on the floor, fingers trembling around the paper, trying to process the avalanche that had just crushed through the ceiling of my life. This wasn't just betrayal. This was architecture. Cold, calculated, and months, maybe years in the making. She hadn't fallen into someone else's arms. She'd built an escape tunnel out of mine, brick by brick, and she was almost gone. I read the note again. Every line screamed intent. A fake consulting job tied to my name. A falsified invoice. Multiple references to transfers from an account I didn't even know existed. An account that apparently had my name on it. All connected to a company I'd never worked for. But the worst part? The letter was addressed to someone. Everything's almost ready. Just a few more weeks. I'll make sure the idiot signs the documents without reading them. He trusts me too much. After that, he won't have anything left. I dropped the letter and stared at it like it might explode. The idiot. That was me. I had trusted her with everything. My name, my finances, my soul. And now, she was calling me an idiot while plotting to throw my entire life into a meat grinder for some faceless man named R. I heard her upstairs, humming again. Same tune she hummed when she cooked those pancakes. Something cheerful. Something that felt like it had always been meant to mock me. I stood up. My head was spinning, but something had shifted inside me. Not rage. Not yet. Something quieter. Sharper. Clarity. I walked into her bedroom. She was brushing her hair, completely at ease, like the world didn't just tilt off its axis. You left a note under the piano, I said. She met my eyes in the mirror. Did I? I didn't look away. Who's R? She smiled without turning. No one you know. You forged my signature. Oh, please. She set the brush down slowly. Don't act surprised. You were always too trusting. It was easy. Why? She finally turned to face me, eyes blazing, not with regret, but with some sick version of triumph. Because I wanted more than this. More than you. And because I could. You planned to destroy me. She stepped closer. Close enough for me to see the shimmer of something cruel behind her mascara. You were never going to leave. You would have stayed even after the affair. You would have forgiven me. So I had to give you a reason to hate me. It made it easier. My voice cracked. For who? For me, she said without hesitation. And for R. I should have screamed. I should have cried. But I didn't do either. I left the room, walked to my office, locked the door, and made 2 phone calls. One to a lawyer I knew I could trust. The other to a friend who owed me a very specific kind of favor, the kind where no questions are asked and silence is payment. She thought she'd won. She thought I'd sit quietly while she handed my life over to some faceless man and smiled while it burned. She was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I sat in my office chair, the glow of my monitor painting the room in cold blue light while I stared at the note over and over. I scanned it, backed it up, emailed it to 3 dummy accounts I hadn't touched since college. I printed a copy and stashed it in a book behind a bookshelf, paranoid like a hunted animal. The letter wasn't just damning, it was leverage. And if she was capable of this much manipulation, I wasn't going to put anything past her. At 3:47 a.m. I started going through her things. Her laptop was locked, but she'd made the mistake of using the same password for years, our anniversary. I typed it in, and just like that, the gates to her real world opened. This wasn't the version of her life she presented to me, full of Pinterest boards and travel itineraries. This was a digital mausoleum of secrets. There were folders. Not work folders. Titled things like, Options if Mike asks, Final Timeline, and then one that stopped my pulse cold, After. Inside it, screenshots. Conversations. Bank transactions. Legal drafts. Copies of my signature, one of which I definitely didn't remember signing. And videos. I clicked one. It started with a black screen. Then audio. Her voice. I just need to make sure it looks like he agreed. If we nudge him right after that whine, he'll sign anything. He always does. A man's voice, chuckling. Poor bastard. You really picked a soft one. That's what makes him perfect. I paused the video. I couldn't breathe. Not from sadness. That had already burned out. This was something colder now. A dull, hollow ache where trust used to live. Something that whispered, she wanted you broken from the beginning. But the next folder, the next one, brought everything to a screeching, sickening halt. It was labeled Dad's files. At first, I thought it was about her father. But no. Inside were scanned images, notarized documents, correspondences between her and my father. My dead father. He died 3 years ago. A heart attack. We weren't close, but I'd flown out for the funeral. Buried him. Said goodbye. And yet, here were emails. Dozens. Going back years. One caught my eye immediately. Subject. Does Mike suspect anything? I opened it, hands cold. Her reply. Not yet. He still thinks the stocks were a gift. You were right to push him into it. Now it's all tied to his name. I clicked through more. Slowly, the shape of it began to form. My father. Controlling, ruthless, always disappointed in me, had helped her. Helped her manipulate me. Helped her funnel money, fake documents, bury trails. It wasn't just her betrayal. It was his too. He never approved of our marriage. I thought he was just being his usual critical self. Turns out he was trying to orchestrate something far worse. And now he was dead. But she wasn't. I closed the laptop and stared into nothing for what felt like hours. They wanted me erased. Financially, legally, spiritually. Too bad for them, I found the files before they could finish the job. By sunrise, I had a planned AT exactly 7:12 a.m. I made her coffee. 2 sugars, 1 cream, almond milk. The way she liked it. I placed it gently by her side of the bed as she scrolled on her phone, pretending I didn't know she was texting him. I even kissed her forehead. She blinked at me like I was speaking Latin. What's this? Just coffee, I said. You've been tired lately. Thought I'd be nice. I watched her eyes narrow slightly. Suspicion. She wasn't stupid. She'd spent too long building a fortress of lies to not sense a shift in the air. But she sipped it anyway. Habit is a funny thing, especially when someone thinks they're already holding the knife. You okay? She asked. Better than I've been in months. She tilted her head. Something happened? Nope. She wasn't going to press further. She was trying to gauge if her plan was collapsing or if I was cracking under pressure. And in her head, she probably assumed I was slipping into desperation. Perfect. That afternoon, I sent her flowers. To the house. Roses. A card that read, "For everything. I love you." I watched her reaction from the hallway mirror, eyes lit up with confusion, maybe a flicker of guilt, but only for a second. Then she smiled. The fakest, most calculated smile I've ever seen. I knew what she thought. He's trying to win me back. He's desperate. He's weak. She texted me, "You're being so sweet today. What's gotten into you?" I replied, just realizing what matters. I was already on the move. Quietly calling banks. Locking every single one of my accounts. Transferring funds to hard storage wallets, shutting off joint access, freezing credit lines. I filed a temporary freeze on my Social Security and flagged identity theft concerns with my accountant, who, thankfully, hated her. I even filed a quiet motion with the court for preemptive asset protection under suspected fraud. All with the evidence I found in her little digital crypt. My lawyer helped me craft the language so precisely that even if she sensed it coming, she wouldn't be able to act fast enough to undo it. But the real masterpiece? I invited her to dinner. Friday. Her favorite restaurant. The one we went to on our 3rd anniversary. I told her I had a surprise. She put on that blood-red dress she always wore when she wanted to control the room. I wore my calmest smile. I held the door for her. I complimented her hair. And when we sat down at that perfectly lit corner table, I handed her a small gift box. She opened it like a cat swiping at a trapped mouse. Inside was a single flash drive. She looked up at me, confused. I leaned forward and whispered, "That's every lie you ever told. Every fake file, every secret account, every betrayal. And the best part? It's backed up in 4 places." Her face dropped. Not like in movies, no theatrical gasp. Just a quiet, slow erosion of her expression as she realized the walls around her weren't just gone. They'd never been real to begin with. I stood up, placed the signed divorce papers in front of her, and smiled. "You've got 2 choices. You sign this and walk away with what little reputation you still have. Or I let the world see who you really are. Either way, I win." She didn't speak. Not then. Not even as I walked out and left her at that candlelit table with nothing but a USB full of her own crimes. But I knew she would respond. I wanted her to. Because I wasn't done yet. She didn't sign the papers. Of course she didn't. That would have meant surrender, and surrender wasn't in her blood. I knew she'd come back swinging. It was only a matter of how and when. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, a manila envelope arrived at my office. No return address. No markings. Inside were screenshots carefully chosen out of context, designed to twist the narrative. Old texts between me and a female coworker from 2 years ago, one of which read, "You're the only one I can talk to about this." Another said, "If I didn't have to go home, I'd stay with you all night." They were real, but they were never romantic. The woman in question was my friend, someone who'd been going through a breakdown at the time. My words were comfort, not confession. But that's not how it would look to a court. Or to her family. Or to a jury. I knew what this was, her last-ditch attempt to rewrite the story. To spin her web faster than I could burn it down. She wasn't trying to win the marriage anymore. She was trying to bury me legally before I could detonate the truth. She thought she'd found my weakness. So I gave her what she wanted. I called her that evening. "You win," I said. Silence. "Say that again?" Her voice was cautious but laced with victory. "I said you win. You always wanted everything, right? The house. The accounts. The narrative. I'll sign over whatever you want. Let's make it easy." She didn't answer right away. That silence told me everything. She wasn't expecting this. She thought I'd fight to the death. She thought I was too proud to break. She thought wrong. "Come over," she said. "We'll talk." So I did. I walked into the house that night with 2 things in my pocket, a wire and a copy of her note, the one from under the piano. She poured me wine. She wore the same perfume she used to wear when she was trying to seduce me back into compliance. She laughed too easily. Touched my arm. Played the role of the forgiving wife, the misunderstood victim. "Maybe we don't have to end this in flames," she whispered. I played along. You know, I said I've been thinking about that account you mentioned. The one I didn't know about. Maybe I should have paid more attention. She froze. What account? The one in your little note to R. The one that's been collecting money under my name. Her smile died. Slowly, like a candle choking on its last breath. You read that? I did. She didn't move. Just stared. Who else knows? She asked. I took another sip of wine. Depends on how tonight goes. She stood up slowly, walked over to her purse. And for a moment I thought she was going to pull out something drastic, a knife, a phone, a confession. Instead, she sat back down and pulled out her phone. You're bluffing, she said. I nodded to the bookshelf behind me. Go ahead. Check the third. Hell, check your own laptop if you want. I mirrored your drive 3 nights ago. Her fingers twitched. She didn't check. She knew I wasn't lying. What do you want? To see how far you'll go when you think no one's watching. The light changed in her eyes. For the first time in this entire ordeal, she looked cornered. No performance. No smirk. Just the quiet horror of someone realizing the mask doesn't work anymore. You think you've won, she hissed. I stood. No. I think I've survived. That's more than you can say. As I left, I tapped my chest twice, the signal for the guy recording from across the street to cut the mic. I'd gotten everything I needed. But as I walked out, she shouted after me. You still don't know everything. I paused. She was right. I didn't. And that was what terrified me. I couldn't sleep. Not after what she said. You still don't know everything. That sentence didn't leave me. It nested in my spine and built a nest of doubt and dread. After everything, after the forged documents, the hidden accounts, the betrayal, the plan to ruin me, there was more. And whatever it was, she hadn't used it yet. That meant she was saving it. For leverage. For the final blow. I went back to the files. Not hers. Mine. Old hard drives. Photos. Conversations. Emails. Everything from the last decade of my life. If she was hiding something else, it had to be embedded in our past. That's where she always operated, under the layers, in the places I never looked because I thought I didn't need to. Around 2 a.m., I found it. Not in a document. In a photo. It was from our 5th wedding anniversary. A trip to Seattle. The two of us in front of a foggy pier, arms around each other. The restaurant in the background had glass windows, behind them a reflection. Subtle. Easy to miss. A man. The same man from the hotel lobby. From the grainy photo in the envelope. He was there 2 years before I ever noticed him. And in that moment, my stomach dropped. I pulled up our hotel reservation from that trip. We stayed 2 nights. But something felt wrong. I remembered the second night she'd claimed she was sick, stomach bug, and told me to go out alone while she stayed in and rested. I did. I remember walking to a nearby bar, grabbing a drink, texting her to check in. I searched for that message. It was still there. I had sent, let me know if you need anything. I'll bring back soup. No reply. But when I opened my old cloud backup and pulled the photos from that night, one had location tagging still turned on, an accident. It wasn't from our hotel room. It was from his. Same man. Same city. Same weekend. She was never sick. She was in his hotel room while I walked downtown like a damn tourist, wondering if I should bring her back medicine. And she took pictures. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the next file. A voice memo. One I had no memory of recording. But it wasn't mine. It was hers. Unintentionally saved to our shared cloud, maybe by accident. Maybe the phone was still recording after a FaceTime call. Maybe she meant to delete it and forgot. I don't know. All I know is what I heard. His voice low. Muffled. Her voice clearer. He still thinks it was a miscarriage. Pause. I told him we were trying. I told him it just happened. He cried for days. God, he's so easy to control when he's grieving. Silence. Then she added, laughing softly, it wasn't even his. That moment was when something inside me broke in a way that couldn't be repaired. The months of guilt? The nights I stayed up holding her as she pretended to cry. The dreams I had of the child we never had, ashes. Lies. Not a tragedy. A scheme. She lied about losing our baby. Because it wasn't mine. I sat in the dark, the cold hum of the computer fan filling the silence, and I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I thought I'd already seen the bottom. But this? This was a second betrayal. A hidden floor under the trapdoor I thought I'd already fallen through. And below that? God knows how far it went. I didn't plan the confrontation. I didn't script it out, didn't rehearse some perfect takedown in my head. There was no grand strategy, no dramatic music swelling in the background. I just showed up. She was in the garden when I arrived. Clipping roses. Red ones. Same ones I'd bought her the week after she faked that miscarriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. She didn't look surprised to see me. Just wiped her hands on her jeans and asked, "What now?" I walked past her into the house. I didn't speak until we were in the kitchen, the same room where she once told me we'd be naming our first child after my grandmother. A child that never existed. She leaned against the counter, arms folded, eyes scanning me for signs of weakness. I didn't give her any. "I found the voice memo," I said. She didn't flinch. She didn't ask what voice memo. That was the tell. She already knew. "I know it wasn't mine," I added. A pause. Long enough to be heavy. Then, "So what?" That was all she said. "So what?" "I want to know why," I told her. Her jaw tightened. She looked away. "Why do you care now? You already filed. You're already out. What difference does it make?" I stepped closer, not threatening, just enough to make her look me in the eye. "Because I buried that child. I mourned for weeks. I blamed myself. I held you while you pretended to be shattered. And all that time, you were laughing behind my back. I need to understand how someone becomes that." She let out a slow breath, like she was exhausted by the question. Then she said it. "You were never supposed to find out. Not sorry. Not it was a mistake. Just that. I didn't want a child with you. I never did. But I knew you'd push for it. You were already trying to fix the marriage. So I gave you something else to grieve. It kept you compliant." My throat dried out. "You manipulated a fake death. A fake child. It worked." She said it with a shrug, like we were talking about a chess move. Not a lie that carved out the core of my being. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time I didn't feel anger. Or heartbreak. Or betrayal. I felt nothing. Not even hatred. She was empty. A vacuum that fed off the emotions of others to fill the void inside herself. She needed to create chaos to feel real. And I'd been her mirror, her puppet, her little drama stage for far too long. "You don't feel anything, do you?" I asked her. She gave me the smallest, coldest smile. "That's what makes me stronger than you." "No," I said. "That's what makes you forgettable." And I left. But this wasn't over. Because the final piece hadn't clicked into place yet, the thing that would explain why she built all this scaffolding of deception and cruelty. The affair, the fake pregnancy, the forged files, my father's involvement, all of it was part of something bigger. I could feel it. And I wasn't walking away until I uncovered it. It came to me like most terrible things do, quietly and far too late. A name. One that had appeared more than once in the documents she buried. In the emails with my father. In the wire transfers. I had seen it before but brushed it off, assuming it was a shell corporation or a lawyer I didn't recognize. But now, with everything else unmasked, the pieces clicked into place. Dunbridge Holdings. It wasn't a company. It was a trust. Registered under a legal alias I traced back to an old family property, one I hadn't set foot in since I was 19. My father's property. The name triggered a memory. The last serious conversation I'd ever had with him months before he died. We were on the back porch. He'd been drinking too much again, muttering about succession, legacy, protecting the family from leeches. He told me I was too soft. That I let the wrong people too close. I thought he meant my friends. Now I knew. He meant her. I went back to the estate. It was falling apart. Shutters half-hinged. Grass overtaking the driveway. I had inherited it, technically, but never touched it. Too many bad memories. In the back room, an old study, I found the file cabinet where he used to keep his legal records. Most were gone, cleared out, but in the bottom drawer, behind a false panel, there it was. A copy of the Dunbridge Trust Agreement. And on the second page, my name. As a beneficiary. Next to a second name. Hers. But the dates didn't make sense. She was added before we got married. Nearly a year before I even introduced her to my family. Which meant one thing. They had met first. She hadn't just seduced me. My father found her. Chose her. Put her in my path. She was never a coincidence. She was sent. I felt the air leave my lungs. Like my entire history had been rewritten in one stroke. All those accidental meetings, The way we fell into each other's lives like it was fate. It wasn't fate. It was placement. A setup. A test. A twisted legacy. The trust was worth millions, divided evenly between us, but only upon proof of irreconcilable severance. Divorce. Or death. That was the incentive. That's why she didn't leave when the affair began. That's why she staged the betrayal with such precision. That's why she wanted me to catch her. Because if I walked away, she got half. If she walked, she got nothing. She needed to provoke me, destroy me emotionally, push me into initiating the end. And my father? He orchestrated it all. Even in death, he was still playing God, trying to mold me with pain, make me harder, meaner, more like him. And she was his hammer. I drove home in silence. The house was dark. I found her in the living room, half-packed suitcase at her feet, a glass of wine in her hand, calm as ever. "You found it," she said without looking up. "You were part of his plan," I replied. "From the beginning." "Not part of it," she said. "I was the whole plan." She finally turned her eyes to mine. No shame, no apology. Just that same glint I saw the first night I met her, the one I mistook for charm. Now I saw it clearly. Predator. "So what now?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just walked to the piano, opened the lid, sat down and played a single note, the same one I'd struck the night I found the letter. It echoed through the house like a funeral bell, and I stared at her as it faded, because I finally knew what this had all been about. She didn't speak again after that note rang out. The silence between us wasn't peace. It was calculation. We were both playing chess now, no more illusions, no more roles. The lies were stripped away. The stakes were revealed. And for the first time since this whole thing started, she knew I could win. She sipped her wine, watching me, waiting. The suitcase at her feet wasn't just packed for leaving. It was bait. A signal. She still thought I might beg. That I'd try to salvage what was never real. She didn't know I'd already sent everything to the courts, to her family, to the Dunbridge Trust's legal oversight board. Every document, every file, every voice memo, bank trail, forged signature. My lawyer had drafted a full case file and delivered it, stamped, verified, and hand-delivered by courier. There would be no divorce settlement. She broke the clause. Fraud, deception, malicious intent. She gets nothing. Not half. Not even a suitcase. She narrowed her eyes. "What did you do?" I stood up from the piano. "You remember the trust?" I asked. "The one you needed me to walk away from? You should have read the fine print." Her face didn't twitch, but I saw it. The flicker in her throat. The tightening behind her jaw. The realization that the floor beneath her wasn't just cracked, it was gone. "You lose everything," I said slowly. "Not because I'm cruel, but because I finally understand what he wanted me to see." She stood up too now, clutching the glass. "Oh, please," she said. "This whole thing was your father's sick little morality play. You think he loved you? He despised you. He told me you were soft. That you'd never survive the world he built. He said I was doing you a favor." I stepped closer, calm as stone. "You believed him," I said. "That's why you'll never win. Because all you ever were was someone else's weapon." She threw the glass. It shattered on the wall behind me. I didn't even blink. "You think this makes you powerful?" she hissed. "You think you're free now?" "I am free," I said, "because you don't live in my head anymore." And then I handed her the final envelope. Inside, the court order, the asset freeze, the cease and desist. A formal legal declaration revoking her claim to the Dunbridge Trust due to breach of Clause 7B, collusion, fraud, and bad faith. Her eyes scanned the document like she could somehow erase the ink. "I don't go down," she whispered. "You already did," I said. "You just haven't hit the ground yet." And I walked out. No dramatics. No final insults. Just the door closing behind me. Quiet. Solid. Permanent. The next day, I got a call from her mother. Sobbing apologies. They'd seen everything. The recordings, the evidence. She had shown up at their house begging, spinning some version of the story where I was the monster. But the truth was undeniable, and for once no one believed her. For 6 long years, they accused me of killing my unfaithful bride. Her parents cursed my name, called me a heartless monster. They never knew about the nights she whispered someone else's name, nor the secret note hidden deep inside that dusty piano. The truth that shattered their lies and set fire to my revenge. That truth didn't need blood. It just needed light. She tried to destroy me, and I let her believe she had. But in the end, I walked away not with a broken heart, but with hers in a sealed envelope. And the knowledge that sometimes the cleanest revenge is surviving better than they ever imagined you could.